The summer heat hung heavy in the air that Tuesday evening. 16-year-old Deshaun wiped the sweat from his forehead as he walked alongside his younger brothers. 14-year-old Andre and 13-year-old Chris, their basketball shoes dragged against the sidewalk, leaving small trails in the dust. Practice had run longer than usual, and Coach Thompson had worked them hard, preparing for the upcoming tournament. "Man, I'm starving," Andre complained, adjusting his backpack. "Mom's gonna be mad we're late for dinner again." Deshaun nodded but didn't respond. He was too tired to even think about the lecture waiting for them at home. Their mother worked double shifts at the hospital, and she always made sure dinner was ready by 6:30. It was already past 7. The three brothers lived on the south side of the city, in a neighborhood where everybody knew everybody. It wasn't fancy, but it was home. Their route from the community center took them through several blocks, and recently, the city had been fixing up some areas, trying to bring in new businesses. They were passing through one of these newer sections, where coffee shops and boutiques had started appearing between the old laundromats and corner stores. Chris suddenly stopped walking. "Hey, look at that." Up ahead, maybe 50 yards away, an expensive silver car sat at an odd angle near the curb. Even from a distance, they could see it was tilted to one side. A man in a dark suit stood beside it, hands on his hips, staring down at the front tire. The late afternoon sun glinted off the car's polished surface, and Deshaun could tell it was one of those fancy German cars his dad always pointed out in magazines. "Flat tire," Andre observed. "That's a nice ride, too. Bet it costs more than our whole house." They continued walking, getting closer to the scene. The man looked to be in his 70s, with silver hair and glasses that caught the light. His white shirt was perfectly pressed, but sweat stained the collar. He pulled out his phone, looked at the screen, then shook his head in frustration. He tried again, holding it up higher, searching for a signal or battery life that apparently wasn't there. The boys walked past, then Deshaun slowed down. Something made him stop. Maybe it was the way his dad always helped neighbors with car trouble. Maybe it was just the defeated slump in the old man's shoulders. Whatever it was, Deshaun couldn't keep walking. "Come on," he said to his brothers, turning around. "What are you doing?" Chris asked, though he followed anyway. "We're gonna help him out," Andre groaned. "Man, we're already late. Mom's gonna kill us." 10 more minutes won't make a difference," Deshaun replied. "We're already dead anyway." They approached the man, who looked up with surprise in his eyes. For a moment, he seemed uncertain, maybe even nervous. 3 teenage boys approaching on an empty street. Deshaun understood that look. He'd seen it before. "Excuse me, sir," Deshaun said, keeping his voice polite and clear. "Looks like you've got some car trouble. You need help with that tire?" The man's expression shifted, tension leaving his face. Yes, actually. My phone died, and I was trying to call for roadside assistance. I'm not sure I even remember how to change a tire anymore. It's been decades since I've had to do it myself. I can help you out," Deshaun offered. "Our dad taught us. He's a mechanic." "Are you sure?" "I don't want to impose on you boys." "It's no problem, sir," Andre chimed in, already moving toward the trunk. "Where's your spare?" The man introduced himself as Richard, and he popped the trunk with his key fob. Inside, everything was pristine and organized. The spare tire sat in its compartment, looking like it had never been touched. Chris located the jack and tire iron while Deshaun assessed the flat. A nail had gone straight through the sidewall. "That's done for," Deshaun said, pointing at the damage. "No fixing that one. Good thing you've got a spare." The 3 brothers moved like a wheeled machine. Deshaun positioned the jack while explaining each step to Richard, who watched with genuine interest. Andre loosened the lug nuts before they lifted the car. Chris pulled off the flat tire, grunting with effort as the heavy wheel came free. "You boys do this often?" Richard asked, his tone warm now, the initial wariness completely gone. "Our dad owns a small garage over on Maple Street," Deshaun explained, while Andre rolled the spare into position. "Johnson's Auto Repair. He started teaching us young. Said every man should know how to take care of basic car problems. Smart man, your father. He's the best," Chris added with pride. "He can fix anything." Once, Someone brought in this old Cadillac that hadn't run in 15 years, and Dad got it started in a week. Richard smiled. Sounds like quite a guy. They worked in comfortable silence for a few minutes, the only sounds being the clink of metal and the occasional grunt of effort. The spare tire went on smoothly. Andre tightened each lug nut carefully, making sure they were secure. Deshaun lowered the jack, and Chris returned the flat tire to the trunk. Give it a few days, and then take it to a shop to get the lug nuts torqued properly, Deshaun advised, wiping his hands on his shorts. And don't go too fast on that spare. It's just meant to get you where you're going. Richard pulled out his wallet, extracting several bills. Boys, I can't thank you enough. Please, let me pay you for your time and help. Deshaun held up his hand. No, sir, that's okay. We were just helping out. Please, I insist. You've saved me a lot of trouble. Really, it's fine, Andre said. Our dad always tells us, if you can help somebody, you should. You don't do it for money. Richard looked at the three of them, something unreadable in his expression. He slowly put his wallet back. Your parents raised you right. That's rare these days. They do their best, Deshaun said with a shrug. What are your names? Richard asked. They introduced themselves one by one. Richard shook each of their hands formally, his grip firm and warm. Where do you boys go to school? Lincoln High, Deshaun answered. I'm a junior. Andre's a freshman, and Chris is in 8th grade at Lincoln Middle. And what do you want to do after school? What are your dreams? It seemed like an odd question from a stranger, but Richard's interest felt genuine. Deshaun found himself answering honestly. I want to be an engineer. Build things. Design things. Maybe work on cars like my dad, but the high-tech ones. Electric vehicles and stuff like that. I want to teach, Andre said. History, probably. I love learning about how things used to be, Chris thought for a moment. A doctor, I think. My mom's a nurse, and she talks about the doctors she works with. How they help people. That sounds cool. Richard nodded slowly, as if committing every word to memory. Those are wonderful goals. Important professions. The world needs good engineers, good teachers, good doctors. We should probably get going, Deshaun said, glancing at the darkening sky. We're pretty late for dinner already. Of course. Thank you again, boys. You've restored my faith in something today. More than you know. They said their goodbyes and started walking home again, this time moving faster. Behind them, they heard the Mercedes engine start smoothly. Richard waved as he pulled away from the curb, and they waved back. That was weird, Chris said once they were alone again. What was weird? Andre asked. Nothing bad weird. Just, I don't know. He seemed really interested in us. Asked a lot of questions. Deshaun shrugged. He was just being nice. Making conversation. Come on, let's jog the rest of the way. Maybe we can sneak in before Mom gets too mad. They broke into a light run, their tired legs protesting. None of them thought much more about the encounter. It was just a good deed, the kind their parents had raised them to do without expecting anything in return. Just another Tuesday evening in their regular lives. They had no idea that everything was about to change. The next day started like any other Wednesday. Deshaun woke up to the smell of pancakes drifting up from the kitchen. His mother, Patricia, always made a big breakfast on Wednesdays because it was her day off from the hospital. He could hear his brothers already downstairs, probably fighting over who got the last of the syrup. School was school. Nothing special happened. Deshaun sat through algebra, English, and chemistry, his mind wandering occasionally to the basketball tournament coming up next month. At lunch, he barely thought about the man with the flat tire. It had already become just another memory, filed away with 100 other small moments. By 3:30, he was back home, dropped off by the school bus that stopped at the corner of their street. Andre and Chris were already in the living room, fighting over the TV remote. Their dad, Leonard, was in the garage like always, the sound of power tools humming through the walls. Boys. Stop that fighting, Patricia called from the kitchen, where she was prepping vegetables for dinner, and somebody set the table. We're eating at 6 today. Deshaun grabbed a bag of chips from the pantry and was heading upstairs to start his homework when his mother's voice changed. It got quiet in that way that made everyone stop what they were doing. Leonard. Leonard, come here, please. The power tools went silent. Deshaun moved to the window, following his mother's gaze. His brothers crowded beside him, all three peering through the curtains. A black SUV sat parked right in front of their house. Not just any SUV either. This thing was massive, with tinted windows so dark you couldn't see inside, and chrome that gleamed even in the afternoon sun. It looked like the kind of vehicle the president might ride in. Chris whispered. Nobody answered because nobody knew. Their father appeared from the garage, wiping grease from his hands with an old rag. He moved to stand beside Patricia at the front window. The whole family watched as the driver's door opened and a man in a black suit stepped out. Then the passenger door opened and a woman in a gray business suit emerged. From the back, another man appeared, this one carrying a briefcase. Deshaun felt his stomach tighten. In their neighborhood, expensive black vehicles usually meant one of two things, and neither was good. Either it was police, which could mean trouble for someone on the block, or it was something worse. Collections, agencies, lawyers with bad news, or people you didn't want to owe money to. What did you boys do? Patricia asked, her voice sharp with worry. Nothing, Mom. I swear, Deshaun said quickly. We didn't do anything. And why are people in suits coming to our house? Leonard's jaw was set tight. The way it got when he was trying to stay calm but wasn't quite managing it, the three visitors walked up the cracked concrete path to their front porch. The woman led the way, her heels clicking with each step. She carried a leather folder, and her expression was professional, unreadable. When she reached the door, she paused for a moment, smoothing down her jacket before knocking. Leonard looked at Patricia. Some silent conversation passed between them in the way married people can talk without words. Then he walked to the door and opened it, keeping himself positioned in the doorway so the visitors couldn't see inside. Can I help you? His voice was polite but guarded. The woman smiled, and it seemed genuine enough. Good afternoon, sir. My name is Victoria Chen. I'm an attorney with Hartford Industries. Are you Leonard Johnson? I am. What's this about? Is your wife Patricia home? And your three sons, Deshaun, Andre, and Christopher? Now Patricia moved forward, standing beside her husband. I'm Patricia. What do you want with our children? Deshaun felt ice run through his veins. How did these people know all their names? I apologize for arriving unannounced, Victoria continued. I understand this must seem concerning. I promise you, there's nothing wrong. We're here on behalf of Richard Hartford, CEO of Hartford Industries. I believe your sons met him yesterday evening. The three boys exchanged confused looks. Deshaun stepped forward. The man with the flat tire? Yes, exactly. Victoria's smile widened slightly. Mr. Hartford asked us to locate you and deliver an important message. Might we come inside to discuss this? I assure you, this is good news. Leonard and Patricia looked at each other again. Deshaun could see the conflict in his father's face. Everything about this situation felt wrong, too strange, too much like the beginning of a scam. But the woman had mentioned the flat tire, which only someone connected to that man would know about. Let me see some identification first, Leonard said firmly. Victoria reached into her jacket pocket slowly. Pulling out a business card and what looked like a company badge with her photo, the two men with her did the same. Leonard examined each one carefully, then handed them to Patricia. All right, he finally said, stepping back. You can come in. But we're all staying right here in the living room where I can see everybody. The three visitors entered, their shoes quiet on the worn carpet. They looked out of place in the small living room with its second-hand furniture and family photos covering the walls. Deshaun noticed how the younger man's eyes swept across the room, taking in the patched sofa, the old television, the water stain on the ceiling that they'd been meaning to fix for 2 years. Victoria waited until everyone was settled before she spoke. Leonard and Patricia sat together on the couch, their sons standing behind them like a protective wall. The three visitors remained standing, Victoria in front, the two men flanking her like bookends. First, let me thank your sons for what they did yesterday, Victoria began. Mr. Hartford was in a difficult situation, and your boys helped him without hesitation. He was very impressed. They're good kids, Patricia said, her voice still wary. "We taught them to help people when they can. But that doesn't explain why you're here." "You're right. Let me get to the point." Victoria opened her leather folder, pulling out several documents. Yesterday evening, Mr. Hartford was on his way to sign papers that would have dissolved his educational foundation. He'd become discouraged with how the program was being run and felt it had lost its original purpose. Deshaun watched his parents' faces. Seeing the confusion there that matched his own, Victoria continued, "Your son's changed his mind. He spent last night researching your family. I hope that doesn't sound invasive, but Mr. Hartford wanted to know more about the young men who helped him. What he discovered moved him deeply." "What do you mean, researched?" Leonard's voice had an edge to it now. "Public records, mainly. School information, community involvement, that sort of thing. Nothing illegal or inappropriate. I assure you, Mr. Hartford learned that despite financial hardships, you've raised 3 exceptional young men. Deshaun has a 4.0 grade average. Andre volunteers at the library every weekend. Chris has won 2 science fairs in the past year, all while both parents work multiple jobs to make ends meet." The room went very quiet. Patricia's hand found Leonard's and squeezed. "Mr. Hartford wants to do something for your family," Victoria said. "He wants to establish full college scholarships for all 3 of your sons. Full ride, meaning tuition, room and board, books, everything. From whatever universities they get into, all the way through graduation. Even graduate school if they choose to continue." Nobody moved. Nobody breathed. "That's not all." Victoria pulled out another document. "He also wants to pay off your mortgage and the medical debt from Mr. Johnson's work injury 3 years ago. We have the figures here. It totals approximately $230,000. Patricia made a sound, something between a gasp and a sob. Leonard's face had gone completely still, frozen in shock. "This is a joke," Andre whispered behind Deshaun. "This has to be a joke." "It's not a joke," Victoria said gently. "Mr. Hartford is quite serious. These are legal documents prepared by our firm. Everything is legitimate." "Why?" The word burst from Deshaun before he could stop it. "Why would he do this?" "We just changed a tire. That's it. Just a tire." Victoria looked at him with something that might have been admiration. "That's exactly why, young man. You helped a stranger who needed it, expecting nothing in return. In Mr. Hartford's experience, that's become increasingly rare. He wants to reward that kind of character." Leonard finally found his voice. "There's got to be a catch. Nobody gives away that kind of money for changing a tire. What does he want from us?" "That's a fair question," Victoria nodded. "Mr. Hartford does have one request, and he'd like to discuss it with you in person. He's invited your entire family to meet with him at his office downtown. He'll explain everything himself." "When?" Patricia asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Would Friday afternoon work? Say 4 o'clock. His office is in the Hartford Tower on Riverside Avenue. We can send a car for you if transportation is an issue." "We have a car," Leonard said quickly, pride flashing across his face. Of course, Victoria smiled. "Then here's the address and parking information." She handed Patricia a card. "Mr. Hartford is looking forward to meeting all of you properly." The 3 visitors moved toward the door. Victoria paused at the threshold, turning back. "I know this all seems surreal. Take your time processing it. If you have any questions before Friday, my direct number is on that card. And for what it's worth, I've worked for Mr. Hartford for 15 years. He's a good man. Whatever he's planning, I promise you it comes from a genuine place." Then they were gone. The black SUV pulling away from the curb as smoothly as it had arrived. The Johnson family stood in their living room, staring at the business cards and documents Victoria had left on their coffee table. Nobody spoke for a long moment. Finally, Chris broke the silence. "Did that really just happen?" "I don't know," Leonard said slowly. "I honestly don't know." Patricia picked up one of the documents, her hand shaking slightly as she read. Tears started rolling down her cheeks. "Leonard, these look real. This looks like actual legal paperwork." Deshaun felt like the world had tilted sideways. Yesterday, they'd been running home late from basketball practice, worried about getting in trouble for missing dinner. Today, people in suits were talking about hundreds of thousands of dollars in college scholarships. What do we do? Andre asked. Their father sat down heavily on the couch, pulling Patricia down beside him. He stared at the documents spread across the table, like they might disappear if he looked away. I guess, he said finally, we go meet this Mr. Hartford on Friday, and we find out what he really wants. Friday came slower than Christmas morning. Deshaun barely slept Thursday night, staring at his ceiling and wondering what would happen. His brothers weren't any better. He could hear Andre tossing and turning in the next room. And twice Chris got up to use the bathroom when Deshaun knew he didn't really need to go. At breakfast, nobody ate much. Patricia had made eggs and toast, but they sat getting cold on everyone's plates. Leonard kept reading the documents Victoria had left, like he was searching for some hidden clause or trick he'd missed the first 100 times. Maybe we shouldn't go, Patricia said quietly, pushing eggs around with her fork. Maybe this is all too good to be true. We have to go, Mom, Deshaun said. We need to know what this is really about. Leonard nodded slowly. The boy's right. We go, we listen, and if something feels wrong, we walk away. Simple as that. But nothing about this felt simple. By 3 o'clock, everyone was dressed in their Sunday clothes. Deshaun wore the suit his grandmother had bought him for his cousin's wedding last year. It was a little tight now, but it was the best he had. Andre and Chris wore button-down shirts and dress pants. Their parents looked sharp too. Leonard in his only suit and Patricia in a blue dress she usually saved for church. They piled into their 15-year-old Honda, and Leonard drove carefully through the city streets. Nobody spoke much during the drive. The radio played softly. Some talk show that none of them were really listening to. Hartford Tower stood downtown like a giant glass monument. 50 stories of gleaming windows that reflected the afternoon sun so brightly you could barely look at it straight on. Deshaun had passed this building 100 times on the bus and never imagined he'd be going inside. Leonard found parking in the visitor's garage, and they all climbed out, smoothing down clothes and checking themselves in the car windows. Deshaun noticed his dad's hands shaking slightly as he locked the doors. The lobby was all marble and chrome, the ceiling so high their footsteps echoed. A security desk sat in the center, manned by 2 guards in crisp uniforms. People in business suits moved past them quickly, everyone looking important and busy. Can I help you? One of the guards asked as they approached. We're here to see Richard Hartford, Leonard said, his voice strong despite his nervousness. We have an appointment for 4 o'clock. The Johnson family. The guard checked his computer, then nodded. Yes, sir, you're on the list. Take the elevator bank on the right all the way up to the 50th floor. Someone will meet you there. The elevator was the fanciest thing Deshaun had ever been in. Glass walls showed the city dropping away as they rose higher and higher. Chris pressed his face close to the glass, watching the building shrink below them. Andre stood rigid, gripping the handrail like his life depended on it. When the doors opened on the 50th floor, Victoria was waiting. She smiled warmly, looking less intimidating than she had in their living room. Welcome, all of you. Thank you for coming. Mr. Hartford is excited to meet you properly. She led them down a hallway lined with expensive artwork and photographs. Through glass walls, they could see conference rooms and offices where people worked at computers or sat in meetings. Everyone looked so professional, so put together. Deshaun felt like a fish out of water. At the end of the hall, Victoria stopped at a large wooden door. She knocked twice, then opened it. The Johnson family is here, Mr. Hartford. Send them in, please. The office was massive. Windows wrapped around 2 walls, offering a view of the entire city spread out below them like a map. A huge desk sat near one window, but Richard wasn't sitting there. Instead, he stood near a leather couch and chairs arranged around a coffee table. He looked different from Tuesday evening, more relaxed, wearing a simple dress shirt without a jacket. When he saw them, his face lit up with genuine pleasure. Deshaun, Andre. Chris, it's wonderful to see you boys again. He moved forward, shaking each of their hands. Then he turned to their parents. And you must be Leonard and Patricia. It's an honor to meet you both. Please, everyone sit down. Can I get anyone water? Coffee? Anything at all? They all shook their heads. settling nervously onto the leather furniture that probably cost more than everything in their living room combined. Richard sat across from them, leaning forward with his elbows on his knees, his expression open and friendly. "I'm sure you have a lot of questions," he began, "and probably think I'm crazy for offering what I did. So let me start by telling you a bit about myself and why this matters so much to me." He gestured around the office. "All of this, the company, the money, the success, it didn't start here. I grew up in a neighborhood not unlike yours. My father worked in a factory. My mother cleaned houses. We didn't have much, but we had each other, and we had values." Richard paused, his eyes distant with memory. "When I was 17, I was working at a gas station after school, saving money for college. One night, a man came in, well-dressed, driving an expensive car. He was short on cash for gas and asked if he could write me a check. My boss would have killed me for accepting a check, but something told me to trust him. The next day, that man came back. Turned out he was a businessman passing through town. He was so impressed that I'd trusted him that he asked me about my life, my plans. When he learned I was trying to save for college, he offered to pay my entire tuition to any school that would accept me." Tricia gasped softly. Leonard leaned forward, suddenly understanding. "That man's name was Thomas Whitmore, and his kindness changed the entire trajectory of my life. I went to MIT, started this company, built all of this, and I promised myself that someday when I had the means, I would do for someone else what he did for me." Richard looked at each of them in turn. "I started a foundation 20 years ago to help young people get education. But over time, it became bureaucratic. Applications, committees, recommendations from the right people. It lost the spirit of what Thomas did for me, which was to simply recognize good character when he saw it and help it flourish. Tuesday evening, I was driving back from a doctor's appointment that didn't go well. I was frustrated, tired, and questioning everything I'd built. Then my tire went flat, my phone died, and I was stranded. And 3 young men stopped to help me, expecting nothing in return. It reminded me of what really matters." Deshaun found his voice. "Sir, we still don't understand why you're doing all this. We just helped with a tire." "But that's exactly it, son. You didn't see an opportunity? You didn't see someone you could get something from. You saw a person who needed help, and you gave it freely. After you left, I spent the evening learning about your family. Your father who works 60-hour weeks to keep his garage running and support his family. Your mother who does double shifts at the hospital. And you 3 boys who excel in school, help in your community, and still find time to help a stranger on the street." Richard stood up, walking to his desk and picking up a folder. "That's the kind of character that deserves support. That's the kind of family that represents what this country should be about. And that's why I want to help you." He handed the folder to Leonard. "Everything Victoria mentioned is in there. Scholarship details for all 3 boys, full ride to whatever schools they get into. The mortgage payoff, the medical debt. It's all legitimate, all legal, all ready to go." Leonard opened the folder with trembling hands, Patricia leaning over his shoulder. They read in silence for a long moment. Deshaun watched his mother's eyes fill with tears again. "But there is one thing I'd like to ask in return," Richard continued. "Not as a condition, but as a request. If you say no, everything still stands. The scholarships, the debt payoff, all of it. But I'm hoping you'll say yes." Everyone looked up at him, waiting. "I want to restart my foundation the right way. And I'd like your sons to be part of it. Not just as recipients, but as mentors. I want them to spend a few hours each month working with other young people from backgrounds like yours. Teaching them what you've taught them. Skills, values, the importance of helping others. I want them to be the kind of role models I wish I'd had growing up." He sat back down, looking directly at Deshaun, Andre, and Chris. "You boys would come here once or twice a month, meet with groups of kids, teach them things like how to change a tire, how to handle a job interview, how to make good choices. Share your experiences. Show them that good character matters and that people notice when you do the right thing." "That's it?" Andre asked. "That's what you want?" "That's it. Nothing that interferes with school or your lives. Just your time and your example. The three brothers looked at each other, that silent communication that comes from growing up together. Then Deshaun turned back to Richard. "We'd be honored to do that, sir." Richard smiled, but there was something sad in his eyes now. "There's one more thing you should know. I wasn't completely honest about why Tuesday evening was so difficult for me." The room got very quiet. 6 months ago, I was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer, stage 4. The doctors have given me maybe a year, possibly less. That appointment Tuesday was to get my latest scan results. They weren't good. Patricia's hand flew to her mouth. Leonard sat up straighter. "I was on my way to shut down the foundation because I realized I wouldn't live to see it through. I'd given up. But you three reminded me that the time I have left matters. That I can still make a difference, even if I won't be here to see how it all turns out." Richard's voice grew thick with emotion. "You gave me more than help with a tire. You gave me purpose for whatever time I have remaining. You reminded me why any of this matters. And for that, I can never repay you enough." Deshaun felt tears burning in his eyes. This wasn't just about money or scholarships anymore. This was about a man trying to do something meaningful before his time ran out. "So what happens now?" Leonard asked quietly. "Now," Richard said, his smile returning, "we make this official. Victoria has all the paperwork. We set up the scholarships, clear your debts, and start planning this new foundation. And you boys help me build something that will outlast all of us." He stood up, extending his hand. "Do we have a deal?" One by one, they all shook his hand. And in that moment, everything changed. 3 months passed like a whirlwind. The paperwork went through faster than Leonard thought possible. The mortgage company called to confirm their house was paid off in full. The hospital sent a letter stating all medical debt had been cleared. It still didn't feel real, but what felt most surreal was the work with the foundation. Every other Saturday, Deshaun, Andre, and Chris took the bus downtown to Hartford Tower. The first few times, they were nervous, unsure of what they were supposed to do. But Richard had a way of making them feel comfortable. It's like they belonged there. The foundation had set up a community room on the 20th floor. It had tables, chairs, whiteboards, and enough space for about 30 kids. Richard's team had reached out to schools and community centers in neighborhoods across the city, inviting young people to come learn skills that most schools didn't teach anymore. The first Saturday, only 8 kids showed up. They sat scattered around the room, looking suspicious and uncomfortable. Deshaun understood that feeling. These kids came from places like his neighborhood, where opportunities were scarce and promises were usually broken. "All right," Deshaun had said that first day, standing in front of the group with his brothers beside him. "We're not here to lecture you or tell you how to live. We're just here to share some things we've learned. Practical stuff that might help you out someday." They started with car basics, because that's what they knew best. Leonard had sent them with a tire, a jack, and some basic tools. Deshaun showed them how to change a tire, check oil, jumpstart a battery. Simple things that could save you hundreds of dollars if you could do them yourself. "My dad always says knowledge is the best tool you can own," Andre explained, while demonstrating how to check tire pressure. "Nobody can take it from you, and it's always there when you need it." Chris talked about school and studying, sharing the techniques that had helped him win those science fairs. He made it sound less like work and more like solving puzzles. "Find what interests you," he told them. "Don't just memorize stuff for tests. Actually get curious about why things work the way they do. That's when learning gets fun." By the third Saturday, 20 kids showed up. By the sixth, they had to split into 2 groups because 35 came through the door. Richard attended every session he could. Some days he looked strong, energetic, participating fully. Other days, Deshaun could see the illness taking its toll. Richard would sit in a chair at the back of the room, his face pale, his movements slower. But he was always smiling, always watching with that look of satisfaction. "You're doing something special here," he told the boys one afternoon after a session. They were cleaning up, putting tools away while kids filed out, chattering excitedly about what they'd learned. "You're giving them hope, showing them that people from their world can succeed." "We're just teaching them stuff," Deshaun said modestly. No, you're teaching them that someone cares, that someone believes in them. That's worth more than any skill. The foundation grew in other ways too. Richard hired staff, set up a proper scholarship program, and partnered with local businesses to offer internships. But the Saturday sessions with the three brothers remained the heart of it all. Richard insisted on that. At school, things changed for the boys too. Word got around about what had happened, though the family tried to keep it quiet. Still, in a neighborhood like theirs, news traveled fast. Some kids were supportive and happy for them. Others weren't. Must be nice having a rich white guy save you, someone said to Deshaun in the hallway one day. The comment stung because there was both truth and unfairness in it. That evening, Deshaun mentioned it to Richard during one of their planning meetings. Richard nodded thoughtfully. People will always have opinions. Some will say, you didn't earn this, that you were just lucky. Here's what I've learned in 73 years. Luck is real, but so is character. Yes, you were lucky that I had a flat tire in front of you. But thousands of people pass someone in need every day and do nothing. Your choice to help? That wasn't luck. That was who you are. He paused, coughing slightly. Victoria appeared with water, which he sipped gratefully before continuing. You don't owe anyone an explanation for accepting help. You especially don't owe them an explanation for paying it forward by helping others. Let your actions speak for themselves. By December, Richard's health had declined noticeably. He'd lost weight, and the treatments left him exhausted. Some Saturdays he couldn't make it to the foundation at all. But he video called in, watching the sessions from home, his face appearing on the big screen at the front of the room. Don't look so worried, he told the boys when they visited him at his house one Sunday afternoon. He lived in a mansion in the hills, but somehow it felt less intimidating than the office had. Family photos covered every surface, and the furniture looked actually lived in. I've had a good run. Better than most people get. And these past few months have been the best part. Patricia had come with them this time, bringing soup she'd made. Richard accepted it gratefully, and they all sat in his living room, talking like old friends rather than a billionaire and the family he'd helped. I want to tell you something, Richard said, setting down his soup. I've been revising my will. The bulk of my estate is going to the foundation to keep it running long after I'm gone. But I'm also setting up individual trust funds for each of you boys. Nothing enormous, but enough to give you security. Graduate school, starting a business, buying a house someday. Whatever you need, Mr. Hartford. You've already done so much. Leonard started to protest. Richard held up his hand. Leonard, let me finish. I don't have children of my own. My wife passed 10 years ago, and we never had kids. My relatives will be well taken care of, but they don't need my money. You know what they need? They need to see what I saw in your sons. They need to remember that wealth means nothing if it doesn't do some good. He looked at Deshaun Andre. And Chris, you three have given me something I thought I'd lost. Purpose, joy, a reason to wake up.
Each morning.
Even when my body's telling me to give up. That's priceless. The next Saturday was different. Richard made it to the foundation, but he brought more than just himself. He brought a camera crew. I want to document this, he explained to the boys before the session started. Not for publicity, but for the foundation. So that 5 years from now, 10 years from now, people remember why this started and what it's supposed to be about. That day's session was packed. 42 kids showed up. They learned about job interviews, how to write a resume, how to dress professionally on a budget. Andre led a discussion about finding mentors and asking for help when you need it. Pride can't feed you, Andre said, and the room got quiet. I used to think asking for help meant you were weak, but it's actually the opposite. It takes courage to admit you don't know something or can't do something alone. The strongest people I know are the ones who aren't afraid to reach out. Deshaun watched Richard watching Andre, and he saw tears streaming down the old man's face. After the session, Richard pulled all three boys aside. Victoria was there too, along with 2 people the boys had never met, lawyers from the look of them. I need to tell you something, and I need you to listen carefully, Richard said. His voice was serious now, his expression grave. My doctors told me yesterday that the treatments aren't working anymore. I have maybe 2 months, possibly less, The words hit like a punch. Chris actually stumbled backward, and Andre grabbed his shoulder to steady him. Deshaun felt the room spin slightly. I'm telling you this because I need you to be prepared. The foundation is set up to run without me. Victoria will oversee it, and when you boys turn 21, you'll join the board of directors officially. But until then, you'll keep doing exactly what you're doing. Those kids need you. Can't do this without you, Chris said, his voice cracking. Yes, you can. You already are. I'm just the guy who writes the checks and sits in the back of the room. You three are the heart of this whole thing. Richard stood up slowly, and all three boys moved to hug him. It wasn't planned or awkward. It just happened naturally, like he was family, because somehow he had become family. I need one promise from you, Richard said when they pulled apart. Don't stop. Don't let this end when I'm gone. There are so many kids out there who just need someone to believe in them, to show them a different path. Be that for them. Can you promise me that? We promise, Deshaun said, and his brothers nodded. Good, Richard smiled, wiping his eyes. Now, I have something for each of you. He pulled out 3 envelopes, handing one to each boy. Don't open these now. Open them later when you're alone. These are letters I've written to you. Things I want you to know. Advice I wish someone had given me at your age. Keep them somewhere safe. That night, in his bedroom, Deshaun opened his envelope with shaking hands. The letter was 3 pages long, handwritten, in slightly shaky script. It talked about staying true to your values even when it's hard, about the importance of family, about finding work that matters more than work that just pays well, about remembering where you came from and helping others climb the same ladder you did at the end. Richard had written something that made Deshaun cry for the first time since this whole journey began. You didn't just help an old man with a flat tire that day, Deshaun. You helped him remember why his life had meaning. You gave me a reason to fight a little longer, to try to do a bit more good before my time runs out. For that, I will be forever grateful. You and your brothers are proof that the next generation is in good hands. Make me proud, son. I know you will. Deshaun folded the letter carefully and put it in his desk drawer. Outside his window, the neighborhood looked the same as it always had, but somehow everything had changed, and he knew with absolute certainty that nothing would ever be the same again. Richard Hartford passed away on a cold February morning. He died at home, surrounded by family, with photos from the foundation sessions displayed on his bedside table. Victoria called the Johnson family herself, her voice breaking as she delivered the news. The funeral was held at the largest church in the city. Deshaun had never seen so many people in one place. Business executives, politicians, employees from Hartford Industries, and hundreds of others whose lives Richard had touched over the years. But what struck Deshaun most were the kids from the foundation. Nearly 60 of them showed up, dressed in their best clothes, many of them crying openly. The service was beautiful and sad in equal measure. Person after person stood up to talk about Richard's generosity, his vision, his impact on the business world. But when it came time for the family to speak, Victoria approached the Johnson family in the front row. Richard left specific instructions, she said quietly, handing Deshaun a folded piece of paper. He wanted you 3 to speak on behalf of the foundation. If you're willing. Deshaun looked at his brothers. They both nodded, though Chris's eyes were red from crying. Together, the 3 of them walked to the front of the church. Deshaun's hand shook as he unfolded the paper Richard had left for them. But when he started reading, his voice came out steady. Mr. Hartford asked us to share something if we were standing here today, Deshaun began, looking out at the sea of faces. He said that most people would talk about his business success, his wealth, his accomplishments, but he wanted people to know what really mattered to him in the end. Andre stepped forward, his voice stronger than Deshaun expected. 6 months ago, we were just 3 kids walking home from basketball practice. We saw someone who needed help, and we stopped. We didn't know who he was. We didn't know what would happen next. We just knew it was the right thing to do. Chris spoke next, his voice quiet but clear. Mr. Hartford told us that we gave him something money couldn't buy. We gave him purpose. We reminded him why any of his success mattered. Not because of what he built, but because of what he could do with it to help others. Deshaun continued, he made us promise to keep the foundation going. to keep working with kids who need someone to believe in them. To remember that every person you meet is carrying a story you don't know, and every small kindness has the power to change lives in ways you can't imagine. He paused, fighting back tears. We only knew Mr. Hartford for 6 months. But in that time, he became like family. He showed us that success isn't measured by what you accumulate, but by what you give away. Not just money, but time, attention, belief in others. Andre picked up the thread. There are kids in this room who came to our Saturday sessions expecting nothing and left believing in themselves. That's Mr. Hartford's real legacy. Not the buildings or the company or the wealth. It's the lives he changed by caring enough to try. So we want to make a promise, Chris said, looking up at the vaulted ceiling, as if Richard might somehow hear. We promise to keep this going. To honor what you started. To help other kids the way you helped us. Deshawn folded the paper. Mr. Hartford, thank you for seeing something in us worth investing in. Thank you for reminding us that kindness matters and that ordinary people can do extraordinary things. We'll make you proud. That's our promise. The church was silent except for quiet crying. As the boys walked back to their seats, they passed row after row of people wiping their eyes. Patricia pulled all 3 of them close, whispering, "He'd be so proud of you." After the funeral, there was a reception at Hartford Tower. The foundation room, on the 20th floor, had been transformed with photos from every session they'd held. Deshawn walked around, looking at pictures of kids learning to change tires, practicing handshakes, working on resumes. Laughing at something Andre had said in one corner, a video played on loop. It was from that last Saturday when Richard had brought the cameras. On the screen, Richard sat in his chair at the back of the room, watching the boys work with the kids. His face showed pure contentment. Underneath a caption read, "This is what matters." A woman approached Deshawn, someone he didn't recognize. She was in her 30s, well-dressed, professional-looking. "You don't know me," she said, "but I had to tell you something. 20 years ago, I was one of the first recipients of Mr. Hartford's original scholarship program. I came from nothing, and that scholarship got me through college. I'm a doctor now. Because of him, I've been able to help thousands of patients. When I heard what he did for you and how you're paying it forward, I just had to meet you." She wasn't the only one. Throughout the reception, people shared similar stories. Teachers who'd been funded by Richard's education initiatives, small business owners who'd gotten their start with his support, community centers he'd quietly kept running for years. "He did all this?" Chris whispered to Deshawn. "We only saw the foundation." "He did it quietly," Victoria said, overhearing them. She'd been standing nearby, watching the boys take in the scope of Richard's generosity. He didn't want publicity or praise. He just wanted to help. "That's who he was." She handed Deshawn a large envelope. "This is for all 3 of you. Richard wanted you to have it after today." Inside were more letters, but also legal documents. Deshawn scanned them quickly, his eyes widening. Richard had left instructions for the foundation to expand, to open centers in 5 more cities. He'd allocated funds for 100 new scholarships each year, and he'd established a program to train mentors, using the model the boys had created as a template. He believed in what you 3 started, Victoria explained. He wanted to multiply it across the country. You boys won't have to do it alone. We're hiring staff, coordinators, people to handle the logistics. But you'll still be the heart of it, the face of what this foundation represents. Over the next few months, the foundation exploded in ways none of them had imagined. The story of how it all started spread through news articles and social media. 3 teenagers who helped a stranger and ended up changing countless lives. It resonated with people everywhere. Donations poured in from people inspired by Richard's example. Other wealthy individuals reached out, wanting to fund similar programs in their cities. The Saturday sessions in the original Hartford Tower location had to move to a larger space to accommodate all the kids who wanted to attend. But the Johnson family stayed. Grounded. Leonard still ran his garage, though he hired 2 more mechanics and started a free training program for young people who wanted to learn the trade. Patricia still worked at the hospital, but she also volunteered with the foundation, helping to screen and support families who receive scholarships. Deshawn. Andre and Chris balanced school with their foundation work. It wasn't always easy. Some days they were exhausted, overwhelmed by the responsibility. But then a kid would come up after a session and say something like, "You helped me believe I could go to college," or "I got my first job because of what you taught me, and it all felt worth it." One Saturday, almost a year after Richard's death, Deshawn stood in front of a room of 80 kids. The foundation had expanded so much they now had multiple sessions running simultaneously. Andre and Chris ran separate groups, and they'd trained 10 other young mentors to help. "Before we start today," Deshawn said, "I want to tell you all a story. About a Tuesday evening when my brothers and I were walking home from basketball practice." He told them everything. The flat tire, the black SUV, the meeting with Richard, all of it. The kids listened, completely silent. "Here's what I learned from all this," Deshawn continued. "You never know when a small choice is going to change everything. We almost walked past that car. We were tired, we were late, we had a dozen excuses not to stop. But we did stop. And it changed our lives and the lives of everyone in this room." He paused, making eye contact with kids around the room. "Every single day you have opportunities to help someone. To be kind when you don't have to be. To do the right thing even when no one's watching. Most of the time, nothing dramatic happens. But sometimes, just sometimes, that one choice ripples out in ways you can't imagine. Mr. Hartford used to say that character is what you do when you think no one important is watching. But the truth is, someone's always watching. Maybe it's a younger kid who looks up to you. Maybe it's a stranger who needs help. Maybe it's yourself, deciding what kind of person you want to be." A hand went up in the back. A girl, maybe 13, shy-looking. "Yes. Do you ever wish you'd just walk past that car?" she asked, like, was it worth all this pressure and responsibility? Deshawn smiled. It was a fair question, one he'd asked himself on hard days. Honest answer. Sometimes it's overwhelming. Sometimes I wish things were simpler. But then I think about the letter Mr. Hartford left me. He wrote that we gave his life meaning in his final months. We helped him remember what mattered. And now we get to do the same thing for all of you. So no, I wouldn't change it. Not for anything. The session continued, kids breaking into smaller groups to learn different skills. Deshawn watched them work, saw them helping each other, encouraging one another. This was Richard's legacy. Not buildings or money, but this. People lifting each other up. That evening, back home. The three brothers sat on their front porch like they used to before everything changed. The neighborhood looked the same, but they saw it differently now. Every person walking past had a story. Every interaction was a chance to make a difference. "Think we'll still be doing this in 10 years? Chris asked. 20 years, Andre said. 30. This isn't just something we do. It's who we are now. Deshawn nodded, thinking about the letter in his desk drawer, about Richard's words. It's about the promise they'd made. A car drove past, then stopped suddenly. The driver's window rolled down, and a young man stuck his head out. "Excuse me, I think I've got a flat tire. Any chance one of you knows how to change one?" The three brothers looked at each other and started laughing. Then together, they stood up and walked over to help, because that's what you do. You help, and you never know where it might lead.